This is Marco Reus.
This is Shinji Kagawa.
This is Nuri Sahin.
Hello, this is Jadon Sancho.
And you're listening to the Yellow Wall podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 489 of the Yellow Report. I'm your host Stefan Butzko, and today we will talk about Borussia Dortmund in general. And for all that and more, joins me Lars Pollmann. Hello Lars, how are you doing?
Hello Stefan, I'm excited to learn what other than Dortmund we are going to talk about. Otherwise I'm fine. Thanks.
Good. Yeah, I'm good too. Early disclaimer, I did not see the Stuttgart game. Not 1 minute. I was super busy. I was super busy at work. I was so distracted with work that I did not realize Dortmund were even playing until I saw the push notification of my phone that the game had ended. And then I looked a little closer and I saw the final score and I was like, yeah, you know what? I don't need to do all that now. And but I actually just saw the summary of the game. Very carefully said not to say highlights. Yeah, 5-1 loss, obviously very embarrassing. Last, since work has kept me very busy, we also did not talk about the previous two games. You had already just told me that for the game against Heidenheim, the 4-2 win, you were drunk in an Irish pub. I hope that was fun.
I mean, I say drunk. Drunk with glee, I suppose, about the one actually good Dortmund game of the season so far. Because obviously that was probably the high point of, this new project, even though I don't like the word in pro football right now, but that was basically what is probably what Nuri Sahin kind of wants to do in terms of the tempo in passing, the moving parts. Karim Adeyemi had a great game, from what I can tell, because I was in an Irish pub and I did have a few Guinness.
He did have a great game, I can confirm it.
Obviously, they made it a bit more exciting, I suppose, than it had to be, but I would also argue that was down to at least one refereeing decision, which I still don't really understand. The goal they called off for an apparent handball by Pascal Gross, which, I mean, from my perspective, the situation kind of clearly showed that it wasn't handball. So, and I also don't know why that would be recalled, because it wasn't immediately ahead of the goal. But whatever, they still won the game. So bygones be bygones and all that. Yeah, I mean, it was Heidenheim, who obviously had a great season last year, but still, a Friday night home game against that sort of opponent should not be too much of a problem for Dortmund, which I suppose is also a bit of a preview for a later segment on this show.
Correct. Well, anyway, so what I really liked about the Heidenheim game is the lineup, meaning we had an actual left back, and Spaini, Anyway, so we had two center backs, no Emre Can, but Groß and Mecha in midfield, which I thought worked quite well in terms of, you just talked about the passing, and of course what's very important for me this season, and I will not get tired of saying it, that Adeyemi, Malen, plus a real striker were all used in the correct way. It was Guirassí's debut, of course, and you could instantly see the impact he had. And I personally think, and maybe I'm wrong about this, that Adeyemi and Malen are one of the best winger duos if they are applied correctly with a striker they can play off of in Europe. That is my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong about it. Maybe they're not that great as I think, but I honestly think in terms of pace and at least in Malen's case, also finishing skill and dribbling skill, etc., all the attributes they sort of bring to the table is really good. Would even be better if Julian Brandt was also starting into the season somewhat good, but unfortunately, that whole construct did not last very well because Dortmund had to make several subs in that game. And so the final scenes of the Heidenheim win were not good. But overall, I think we all left the game with a positive feeling. And then we entered the 3-0 win against Brugge, which for the longest part did not look like Dortmund were going to win this game. I'll be honest, we had Sabitzer back on the wing, we had Malen up front in the lineup, and it was Can and Groß in midfield. But overall, I think the first minute or so, Brugge instantly had a transition moment because Dortmund, play a very risky brand of football, and we were talking about this beforehand, whether Dortmund would play with the same risk they are playing with the Bundesliga, and I guess that game confirmed it quite quickly that they are indeed playing with a lot of risk, and if Bruges would be better at finishing, they would have been up 2-0, 3-0 very early on in this game, and I guess when we talk about the Stuttgart game, that's exactly what happened. I was happy that Guirassy didn't start, that Sahin gave him probably the rest that was needed, and it was obviously nice to see Bino Gittens then decide the game more or less by himself toward the end. Sorry, Jamie Gittens. My bad. I mean, if before we have to talk about the Stuttgart game, just real quick, the second goal, the two step overs, the caress, and then one more step over before he puts it in the net. That was a pretty special goal and really previews, I think, what we can see from Gittens further down the line this season, especially as a substitute. I think he's going to shred a lot of defenses because, I mean, the ball he received from Emre Can, you would say that Brugge were pretty well organized. You know, they weren't exactly out of shape, and he created that goal all by himself. And that is very nice, but obviously you want to score more team goals than individual goals. But nevertheless, in the Champions League, no one in the end will care how you get the result. A 3-0 win to get the European campaign off is really massive. So shout out to Gittens and of course also Guirassy, who was allowed to take the penalty because usually that's Emre Can's forte. So I think that was kind of nice from Emre Can, since we criticized him a lot. But that's pretty much all I have to say on this game, other than that I thought it was a clever strategy of Sahin to play the shitty system first and then correct it later, so Brugge did not have a chance to react to when Dortmund actually play as nice as they did sort of in the Heidenheim game for the last 10-20 minutes or so. That's sort of my 2 cents. I don't know if you have any more.
Maybe 1.5 cents. I don't know. I also wanted to commend Emre Can for giving up the penalty, because obviously scoring Champions League goals is probably a special thing, even for a defensive midfielder. And Emre Can is the best penalty taker at Dortmund, at least on the evidence of the last 2.5 or so seasons. We all remember the game that shall not be remembered when he gave a penalty up, and that didn't work out so well.
I just love how you always work around it.
That's my education in reading Harry Potter as a 12-year-old or whatever. And also I would say the Gittens stuff, that seems to be like his go-to move, but it's almost in a like Iron Robben quality, where you know what's happening, but knowing what's going to happen and stopping it are two different things. Because I don't know how many right backs, especially at the level of Brugge or Heidenheim or even Frankfurt in the first game of the season, are able to do anything about that when Gittens does his things. Because if you go into abruptly or whatever, you are quite likely to give up a penalty. And if you stay away, give him too much space, he's going to shred you with his quick feet and all that. So I think there's quite a bit of discussion, especially after the Brugge game. Does he have to start now? Can you keep him on the bench and all that? And I think it's kind of a difficult discussion almost, because whenever Gittens has gotten a chance in the starting lineup, there's rarely been a game when he's looked remotely as good as when he comes off the bench. So it's almost a situation where you obviously want to have that kind of quality on the pitch for most of the game, but if he's better suited to make good use of his qualities as a substitute, then maybe that is what ultimately gives a greater good to the team almost. So I think this is a sort of discussion that we'll keep having until Shine, kind of lets loose of Julien Duranville, because then you have two of those guys. So one can start, one can come off the bench. Maybe not in every game, but more often than not. And just from a personal perspective, I want to have that kind of player on the pitch because we all know, we've seen it for most games this season, that the combination play is a bit rusty right now. Obviously, Guirassy as the focal point of attack has only really entered the fray of late. So they need someone, to bring that spark, take players on, make something happen out of nothing. This is basically how they won against Frankfurt, thanks to Gittens. That is basically how they beat Brugge now. And I think it's fairly safe to assume that there will be more of these games. So I kind of just, from a personal perspective, I would always play either Duranville or Gittens and, figure out the rest of the starting lineup sort of around that. Because I don't know that Dortmund can afford to keep that kind of individual quality off the pitch for too much.
Do you think that either Duranville or Gittens can also play as number 10? I'm asking for an out-of-form midfielder that's wearing said number.
No, I don't think so. I think if you wanted to take Julian Brandt out of the starting lineup, which I would actually not be, too much against, I think you can either play Sabitzer, because at least he's going to play in the central role and not die on the wing. Or you play, which is actually a lineup that I'm desperate to see at some point this season, Bayer as like a secondary striker to Guirassy, because as we talked about quite a bit, Bayer is not a natural number 9. He's not going to play with the back to the goal and shadowing or having defenders in his cover shadow the whole time, but he likes to make those runs. He offers very intelligent runs. He moves around a lot in attack, so him playing off Guirassy is kind of what I think Bayer would be best at, and I want to see that. So if you want to take Brandt out, which again I could definitely understand, then I think plugging in Bayer might actually be the best choice, at least for the time being that Gio Reyna's out.
Yeah, I was gonna say that I think it's really unfortunate for Gio that we can't see him much right now, because he looked half decent when he played against Frankfurt, of course, and with the, say what it is, the lack of form of Julian Brandt, I think he would be serviceable right now as an alternative to alleviate Brandt a little bit. But as you just said, Sabitzer is dying on the wing. He said as much in the mixed zone after the Brugge game. Was a bit of a story. For me, it's a story insofar as I just don't see it working. Do you see it working? Like, I also don't think it's anything. You talked about the project, the word. I don't think there's any long-term position for Sabitzer as a winger where I think it'll make sense. Maybe at some point it'll come good, but I just don't see it. Do you see it?
No. And I'm a bit flabbergasted as to why Shine keeps going back to the well with that. And he even talked about it in the press conference on Wednesday. He knows it's not Sabitzer's best position, but he's made countless, I'm paraphrasing here, countless good performances there. When I think those probably came like back in Leipzig days when they were playing a fairly simple 4-4-2, where he's not, hugging the touchline or whatever. So I don't really see it. I think Sabitzer was so critical in central midfield last season during a Champions League run, which I guess is also where the frustration from him comes from, because he was voted into the Champions League team of the season, which I suppose is a relatively big thing for a player, because obviously he's not the kind of guy who's going to get a crazy amount of individual accolades or whatever. So I can understand that Sabitzer finds it difficult, to see the reasoning behind him or his being, shifted around a bit to accommodate in the starting lineup for Brandt, who's out of form, for Emre Can, who isn't a tactical fit against every opponent, to, have a somewhat diplomatic viewpoint on that. So I don't understand why they keep going back to this. It's the same thing, what we've talked about the entire season so far. Why are they playing all three healthy centre backs at the same time? Why does Schlotterbeck have to play left back against Stuttgart, whom we all know are, playing on the front foot, quick players all over the pitch in attacking departments and all that? Doesn't make sense. Why do they keep going back to that? I mean, I can understand it at the left back position because they only have Benzebaini, and I suppose they do have Al Mukaba, but he's now got a broken nose, and I don't think Kaba is a realistic option for them in bigger games. So I don't know if they were 3-0 up against Bochum on Friday and they had 25 minutes to spare for Kaba, that would make sense, but you're not going to play that kind of player away to Stuttgart early in the season. So I wrote about it yesterday. There's so much about Sahin's decision making right now that I find hard to understand, and obviously it's very early in the season and a few important players, most importantly Girassi, but also to an extent Bayer, aren't fully integrated yet, cannot be fully integrated yet, but the decision-making process and going back to things that haven't worked out yet, that's certainly something that to be criticized. And if we want to, move seamlessly almost into the Stuttgart game, the one, I don't want to say saving grace because there are no saving graces after a 5-1 thumping, but I think the outward reaction, what Sahin said after the game and also in the press conference now, that at least there's a level of acknowledgement that, it wasn't just a freak occurrence. It wasn't just, hey, Stuttgart were up by 2 goals within I don't know how many minutes and then everything fell apart. No, it was basically the kind of game which Dortmund seem to have 2 or 3 times a year where just nothing works. You can criticize even the simplest things like, preparedness, mentality, all that good stuff. And
we're really back.
Yeah, and in that regard, as I said, not necessarily a saving grace, but I did like, the acknowledgement of, hey, this we were really, really shit here, and not just, unlucky, can happen, move on.
Yeah, that was also the impression I got from the videos I just watched. Honestly, first of all, I really thought the Sabitzer experiment died in Bremen. When we saw the Heidenheim lineup, I thought, okay, we turned a corner, but the fact that Sahin has gone back to it now twice worries me, if I'm honest. And same with the Schlotterbeck lineup. Obviously, it's also not conducive that Felix Metscher is injured after 30 minutes, but nevertheless, I feel like Dortmund currently, and Nuri Sahin in particular, is making things unnecessarily hard for himself and his players. If I look at the team sheet, I'll be honest, I think in general the way Dortmund try to play, which I actually support, is a very risky style, because you basically often pass the ball into pressure. You want your midfielders crowded by the opponent and then hope that they make a good decision, play out of it, just as Can exemplified right before the 5th goal that Stuttgart scored. Just a beauty. But no, obviously these things don't come off quite easily and instantly, so I think these are classic growing pains that we have to endure somewhat. Obviously, losing 5-1 to Stuttgart is very embarrassing, and obviously the way Stuttgart are playing, you of course already have to worry whether Dortmund can even break into the top 4 this season, because Leipzig, Leverkusen, and of course Bayern are also not entirely shit either, unfortunately. So it's going to be tough for Dortmund. So losing against a direct opponent like this is really not good. But obviously I saw a little bit of Stuttgart against Real Madrid, and I was already keenly aware that Stuttgart are just way further currently than Dortmund is. And, Dortmund talk a lot about they want to be the second biggest force in Germany. Right now, you really have to question whether they're even in the top four, just in the pecking order. And that is definitely something that needs to be fixed, because we talk a lot about finances. Watzke talks a lot about finances. Dortmund certainly have the potential and the resources to do better than they're currently doing. But long story short is what I'm trying to say is there are a lot of things that are difficult for Dortmund, a lot of things they have to figure out on the fly, and this lineup does not make me happy whatsoever. I would like to have a couple of things more simplified. Obviously, I would love a left back, and I would like Sabitzer not to play on the wing. If he plays, then I'd want him centrally, and so I'd rather have Adeyemi and Malen start, for example. But Lars, like I said, I didn't see too much of the game, so I think you need to be the load-bearing co-host to walk us through what the fuck happened there.
I mean, honestly, I don't know that anybody wants that. This is the kind of game, if you watched it as an unfortunate soul like myself, you kind of want to forget about it. I'd like to trade places with you, Stefan, not having had to watch it. I guess one positive aspect for me is that I watched Dortmund games without commentary, and this game was on the zone, so I was sitting in silence in my room, just letting the misery,
the tears run down your cheek.
Not necessarily that much, but I let the misery overcome me. The funny thing is, in the first 3-4 minutes, I thought, hey, Dortmund have learned kind of a lesson against Stuttgart, and then the first goal happened, which I sustained.
And Dortmund reminded you that you yourself have not learned this lesson yet.
I suppose, but I sustained that was actually offside and should have been waved off, because Niklas Süle orientated himself towards a player in offside position who made a step towards the ball, so I think that constitutes him as being active, and so the goal should have been waved off.
Well, that's good. Then we can mark this down as a missed referee decision. We don't have to worry about this.
I demand a mistrial. Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and argue that doomed Dortmund from the start, but obviously it doesn't help when Stuttgart, in a very rowdy atmosphere because of the return of Waldemar Anton and to an extent Guirassy as well. When they scored, was it like the 4th minute or so? Obviously, yes. Game state is probably one of the most important and underreported, factors in football results. But obviously, then the second goal was that a set piece?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it was not. I think it was just a cross into the box.
Okay. Whatever.
The third goal was a set piece.
I mean, the fact that we can't differentiate between the 5 goals is also basically an indictment in and of itself.
Well, the fourth one was the dribbling through on the touchline through Bensebaini and Schlotterbeck, and then the cutback to whoever scored that,
Touré.
And then the 5th one was Emre Can losing the ball in midfield and Undav slotting it home.
I mean, obviously a lot of people jumped on Emre Can, but honestly, like the 5th goal in a 5-1 thumping it's not the important one. And like Netscher had a similar loss of possession in the first half that didn't result in a goal. I mean,
I'm sure it resulted in a good chance though.
I think Emre Can as the punching bag, that joke has kind of fizzled out, at least for me. So I'm not going to get on his back, but as I said, the fact that we are having trouble just to remember which goal was which, outside of Guirassy's effort, which was a nice striker's goal, and
really cooked Zagadou there, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't these days? Poor old Dan Axel Zagadou is basically finished in terms of mobility and all that, because he's I don't know how many ACLs he's torn and how many other knee injuries he's had, so that's not necessarily a measuring stick, but I mean, you still have to score that, and that's a fine striker's goal. And I think those listeners who are inclined to take the positives even out of a game like this will probably cling to that striker's goal from Guirassy, because I don't know that Dortmund have another player who can do that. and that includes, players on loan like Mukoko and Alea. I don't know that I would count on them scoring that goal, so that's something. But obviously, ultimately, the entirety of the 90-odd minutes, not a nice experience to have watched. So again, I kind of envy you, Stefan, for not really having that on your conscience.
Yeah, well, thank you, Lars. What I have on my conscience though is the discussions that ensued on Twitter, because I was scrolling a little bit on Sunday evening, and especially from I want to say the press, but definitely media figures. It was sort of written that there are sort of question marks around the transfer strategy now, as there always is. Whether Koto and Maxi Bayer, who have so far not really contributed in any meaningful and positive way, considering that, they both cost 30 million, and for that sort of price tag, you would hope you get an instant impact. The fact that this impact is still lacking, and I don't know in either case how soon it will come, whether that is, misfire transfers. I myself am not that quick to label it that, but Lars, nevertheless, I'm just asking you, do you, after match day 4, already get the feeling that a few things were done wrongly in the past transfer window, or do you still think this can all come good and work out?
I mean, when we talked about the transfer window after deadline day, I think in essence, we all agreed that the dealings they made were all understandable and good, but you can't fix every problem in a team in one transfer window, especially when you also have a coaching change and a bit of a switch in footballing philosophy and all that. So I think I understand where people are coming from, and it's obviously also always a bit of, hindsight 2020 and all that. But for example, I think the most prevalent train of thought, as it were, on Twitter is they shouldn't have paid for Bayer. They should have gotten a left back for that money. But they only let go of Niklas Füllkrug, who provided the funds for Bayer, because they knew they were going to turn around and spend that on another forward, preferably Maxi Bayer. So if they hadn't gone for Maxi Bayer, they probably would still have Niklas Füllkrug in the squad right now. And I don't know, people can make their own judgments on whether they'd be better off with that, for the games that Guirassy missed. I mean, the only game they lost is one Guirassy started, so it's not like not having Guirassy majorly had a negative impact on the team in the first few matches, I would say. So, I don't know. We all sort of identified left back as a problem position. I'm sure people are also now saying they should have just paid for Martin, which is a ridiculous thing to say, because you don't pay 40 million and whatever he's making in wages on Martin, who I think we are already having, a lot of people watching back on him with rose-tinted colors, or glasses rather, because obviously he had a positive impact on the team going forward, but he was a major defensive liability, not only, but also in the Champions League final. So I don't think I would have sanctioned making Ian Maatsen by far Dortmund's record signing. I don't think it's a smart allocation of funds to make a left back your record signing. I'm quite happy with Couto being loaned out and quite possibly, or very likely being signed on a full transfer next season.
I think it's an obligation to buy, actually.
Yeah, but those are always under certain circumstances, so it's not necessarily, they don't have to fulfill the promise already. The thing is that I think if we say that Couto isn't, having an instant impact, we also need to remember that he suffered a muscular injury very early on. I mean, he looked very good in preseason from the few games he played there. I think he had a decent stint against Lübeck in the cup. Obviously, that's not, an opponent that tells you much, but still, I mean, you still play the games, so you can also talk about them. I think from what I saw from Couto, I'm very happy still that he's at Dortmund, and I think there's a very decent chance that I don't know, 6 weeks from now, we look back on people questioning, did that transfer make sense, with, a bit of laughter, because he looks a real player to me, so I'm happy with that. And then left back is the problem issue, the problem position, and defensive midfield, but I would also argue that is one of those things, as you alluded to, Shine makes a bit too difficult for himself, because I think they've already played games with Emre Can where I would say Pascal Groß is perfectly capable of being the lone holding midfielder.
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything you just said. In terms of, also because you somewhat agree with me. So anyway, I honestly think that Dortmund still have to figure so many things out, that these games like in Stuttgart are just bound to happen. And obviously, the away form is always going to be a little bit different than the home form. It just feels, the team just feels so different when they play on the road. I don't even know how to describe it, but you just feel like there's always a lack of cohesion. And yeah, Stuttgart also really, really good, and they showed that against Dortmund, and I'm happy for them, in the sense that I'm glad that they have managed to figure out things despite the losses in personnel they had. Obviously, other than that, I don't like Stuttgart, so I'm not happy for them at all. But Lars, now on Friday we will obviously play against Bochum, and I personally think that this is another good game, similar like the Heidenheim game, for Dortmund to find more of their groove. And if Shine doesn't completely botch his lineup, I think we should probably see a little bit more of that flowing combination football that we saw in the first half against Heidenheim, because honestly, that was really nice to watch. I really enjoyed it. I had actually a lot of fun watching it. And now that I know this version of Borussia Dortmund exists, I think we're going to see more of that eventually. And my hope is that Friday night is going to be the first instance where it'll return. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I've already been positive about the outward reaction of Nuri Sahin to the game in Stuttgart, so I'm kind of expecting that to manifest itself in terms of approach and also lineup against Bochum. It is a home game, as you said, that makes a bit of a difference. It's a Friday night game, which Dortmund at home, I don't know how long they've been basically automatic, but it's been at least, 15, 20 years or so since they lost their home game on Friday evening. And I don't think this will turn out to be a jinx or whatever, because, I mean, quite frankly, if after the kind of wake-up call they've got at Stuttgart, they lay an egg at home against Bochum, who I believe are one of 3 winless teams next to the 2 promoted side in the Bundesliga, and who already seem to be discussing whether or not to let go of their head coach, who only turned up in the summer. I think even after the Stuttgart game, I don't believe that Dortmund's struggles are that massive that they should have any material issues against Bochum. Obviously, we all kind of know how these games seem to go against Bochum.
A little bit of a derby factor.
Yeah, but it seemed to me like that was mostly a thing at Bochum. Obviously, there have been a few interesting refereeing decisions at Bochum, both in the Cup and in the Bundesliga. But in Dortmund, I think outside of that one game under, was it Rose, which they lost under ludicrous circumstances at home to Bochum, I think the record is really good. And why shouldn't it be? Because Bochum are one of those perennial up and down sides in Bundesliga history. And I don't necessarily see them posing too much of a challenge to Dortmund. I think this is one of those games where if Dortmund have real issues, it's probably be down to themselves and not necessarily anything that Bochum does, because I think the only thing that Bochum can really do is try to disrupt, whether that's, fouling, time wasting, nicking a goal on set pieces is probably their best shot. And The rest is probably going to be down to how well Dortmund can break down what is likely to be a fairly massive defense and, hope for a counter kind of approach from Bochum.
Yeah, I will definitely try to have another show between the Bochum and the Celtic game, just because I want to preview the Celtic game a little bit more in depth, because right now I really honestly can't say much about it. And also I want to maybe have a little bit of a better vibe on that episode, in the hope that Dortmund agree with me in playing well on Friday evening. But in all honesty, I'm really looking forward to the game, despite the horrible loss that happened against Stuttgart. And overall, I'm still relatively positive. I just know that this is going to be a tricky season for Dortmund, with, like I said, a lot of moving parts. And we'll see whether Schein and his team figure things out or not. But I refuse to be all doom and gloom about it for now. Bochum, as you said, they have lost in the cup to Regensburg. They lost to Leipzig. They lost to Gladbach and then to Freiburg. And in the last match day against Holstein Kiel, they claimed their first point. I think a 2-2 draw. And if I'm not mistaken, Kiel probably had a very late equalizer or something like that to snatch the win away from Bochum. And so if Bochum are struggling the way they are, I think Dortmund should handle them quite easily. And not only that, I honestly hope that Dortmund actually score like 3, 4, 5, 6 goals in this game, because they certainly have the talent to do it. And like he said, I really want to see Duranville have a cameo in this game, because it's a little weird after Schein said that he has to play him after the international break and that he's doing so well, that he's not really seen the pitch. So, when we talk about individual skill, Bochum just don't have that in defense. So having those quick legs, I think, can also score a couple more individual goals. But goals from open play, like they scored against Heidenheim, are preferred for sure. And really hope that, similar to Heidenheim, Bochum's goalkeeper, I think Dreves is his name, has another shitty night and is not going to have the game of his life. Anyway, that's all my thoughts for now, Lars. Thank you for coming on, just as your fridge is doing right now. As I said, hopefully we'll talk to you between Celtic and Bochum.
Not me, I'm on vacation, Stefan.
Yeah, but Matthias will be back, and we all know he has lived everywhere on this planet, including Scotland. So he's going to be able to maybe talk a little bit about the old Celtics, and if not, then
Celtics?
Celtic, sorry. But you know what I meant. Not the Boston Celtics. Anyhow, long intro short. Thank you for listening, everyone. Goodbye. Until next time.